Narration, 1952, take one. 1952, Post Order 343 came from Camp Pendleton to create the 29 Palms Marine Corps Training Center. The idea was to find a place empty enough to test large-scale live-fire weapons and conduct combined armed exercises, or CAXs. 70 jarheads were the first guys out there. Then in 1976, under Brigadier General Ernest R. Reed, Jr., work began for an expeditionary airfield. At some point later, the name changed to the Marine Corps Air-Ground Combat Training Center. There was a man named Hicks, came to live in Yucca Valley around 1958. Hicks came from Indiana. He had hated working in the cement factory with his brothers and father. He had fought in Korea, but as a sailor. He hated the Navy. Anchor clankers, he always called them. Hicks married a plain woman named Jean. They had 2 sons, Alden and Timothy. Jean died. Hicks lost track of his sons. In the 60s, he hung around Joshua Tree, smoking hash and shooting at snakes. He worked for the base, like most folks up in the high desert. He started up a tool and die shop. He worked on tank armor, but mostly on bazookas. He drove to the base and entered on the Landers side. Landers was in the wind corridor out there and near the big landfill. Landers isn't a city. It's part of the Mojave Desert Homestead Valley, northeast of Flamingo Heights. Landers came to be known for the 1992 earthquake centered there. Hicks was in his 80s by then. He worked for the base for 6 years and drove into the base every day through Landers. Hicks had known George Van Tassel, the UFO expert who had built his Integration near Giant Rock outside Landers. Van Tassel was a former airplane mechanic and flight inspector who came to believe visitors from Venus had contacted him telepathically and taught him the secret of cell rejuvenation. Hicks liked Van Tassel and was a regular visitor at the UFO enthusiast gatherings that were held at the Integration. This was in the 60s and 70s. All white men, all good with their hands, some ex-military, some with criminal histories, but most just bored white guys with plain wives and often drinking problems. It should be noted that the '92 earthquake didn't damage the Integration Dome. Hicks died in 1995. In his final years, he would sit on his porch in the small cabin he had in Yucca Valley and stare out toward the white sands of the 29 Palms Marine Base. When they held exercises and the ground shook from explosions and you could smell the bombs almost before you could hear them, Hicks would light another Pall Mall and curse his life. Where the hell are Tim and Alden? When did he lose track of them? The stars were clear and bright overhead in the desert skies. Coyotes howled and rabbits scurried from one fallen Joshua tree to the next. The occasional tarantula would cross the dirt road out front of his cabin. This was it, his life. This is all it came to. During his middle years, Hicks often thought it was amounting to something. UFOs, the tool and die shop, even his wife Jean. But that was all gone. Now he just woke up, ate, and smoked. He would collect his pension check each month and buy his groceries at the Stater Brothers supermarket. He didn't like how many Negroes had come to the desert in recent years, but he kept those thoughts to himself. This was about all he thought beyond what to microwave for dinner. In 2000, After Hicks was dead several years, the 29 Palms base was renamed yet again, the Marine Air Ground Task Force Training Command. It was going to be used to train the Marines for mountain fighting in Afghanistan, with live fire exercises, artillery, tank, and close air support training. Hicks's eldest son, Alden, who had moved back to the desert after his father's death, which he hadn't even known about, now worked in construction. He worked on crews building the sprawling Combat Town, a 2-acre genuine replica of a Middle East village, complete with a mosque, native role players, and an IED alley. Alden was dark like Gene, and he got hired to play one of the Mujahideen in Combat Town. He thought it was pretty fun. Alden and several off-duty Marines rented a cabin in 29 Palms where they began cooking meth. Dressing up like a, as Alden put it, towel head, while ripped on crystal was about as fun as life got. Alden left after a while, though. A Marine named Norman said the ghost of his father had started to haunt Alden. He couldn't be more specific. Alden moved nearby to Cabazon, an unincorporated city of a few thousand. It's only one of 2 cities in California to have once been incorporated, but voted to unincorporate. Vernon is the other. It's 70% white and poor. Until the Native American mission tribes built the Cabazon Casino, the major attraction of Cabazon had been Dinny the Dinosaur. Dinny was built by former Knott's Berry Farm employee Claude Bell over an 11-year span out of debris and scrap material salvaged from the construction of Interstate 10. The metal frame was finally sprayed with showcrete, or spray concrete, and finished by a friend of Claude's who was paid $1 and a case of Dr. Pepper for the final paint job. Today, the roadside attraction has been sold and enlarged to include a children's museum promoting the teaching of creationism, with toy dinosaurs on sale, with painted slogans such as, "Don't swallow it." MKA partners of Costa Mesa plan to continue expanding and adding attractions. Alden married a girl named Consuelo. She is a charismatic Christian, but doesn't mind that Alden is a non-believer. Alden's household is one of the 39% of those in Cabazon that live below the official U.S. Census designation for poverty.